Fox News cut ties with Tucker Carlson.
One of the most popular figures in conservative media is out.
That's just days after the Fox Corporation settled a legal battle over accusations that Fox hosts, including Carlson, aired false election claims.
Tucker Carlson, arguably the biggest news presenter in America, has left Fox News. And pretty much everyone is saying he was fired. The weird thing is, the 53-year-old was their top presenter, pulling in something like 3 million viewers every evening, way more than any other network. So why did Fox, which is owned by the Murdoch family, fire him? This is a massive story, especially in the United States, where conservatives are mourning and liberals are jumping for joy.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight.
For many conservative Americans, hearing those words every evening was the highlight of their day. A reassuring greeting was usually followed by a slick but disturbing monologue about how the country was going to hell in a handbasket.
This may be the most reckless and destructive thing any American president has ever done to the United States.
With his preppy style and smooth delivery, Tucker owned the primetime news slot from 8 till 9. His ability to articulate exactly what all good conservatives were thinking made him the #1 anchor at Fox, which is the biggest cable news channel in America, well ahead of its rivals. His recent interview with former President Donald Trump was a massive exclusive.
This will be Donald Trump's first interview since everything happened, his arraignment in New York.
The biggest problem we have in the whole world, it's not global warming, it's nuclear warming. And all it takes is one madman, and you're going to have a problem the likes of which the world has never seen.
And that was followed by another huge interview with Elon Musk just a few days ago. How do you run Twitter having fired 80% of the staff, he asked.
If you're not trying to run some sort of glorified activist organization and you're not care that much about censorship, then you can really let go of a lot of people, it turns out.
And now the boot is on the other foot. It's Tucker Carlson who's been let go.
We have some news from within our Fox family. Fox News Media and Tucker Carlson have mutually agreed to part ways.
In that announcement on Monday, Fox said it was mutual. And yet, a few days earlier, Tucker said this on his show.
And we'll be back on Monday. In the meantime, have the best weekend with the ones that you love, and we'll see you then.
Tucker's firing, or mutual decoupling, whatever you call it, came just a couple of days after Fox had to pay out $787 million to settle a defamation lawsuit with Dominion, one of the makers of the voting machines used in the 2020 presidential election.
Some people aren't sure what led to his exit, but Fox says they can think of almost 1 billion reasons why.
Dominion sued Fox News for allegedly amplifying claims that its voting machines had flipped Trump votes to Biden, winning him the election.
Electronic voting is not as secure as traditional hand counting, period. It never will be as secure. Voters can see this because it's obvious and it makes them nervous.
Well, that lawsuit may not have gone to court, but it still revealed what Tucker Carlson really thought off camera via the release of thousands of text messages and emails. They included Carlson's skepticism over the claims that the election was rigged. It also revealed his hatred for Donald Trump and a lot of criticism of the way Fox News was being run. In messages sent to other presenters and his producer, he said, "Do the executives understand how much credibility and trust we've lost with our audience?" Meaning by calling the election for Biden before it was settled. And then, with just days left of Trump's presidency, he texted, "We are very, very close to being able to ignore Trump most nights. I truly can't wait." A couple of days later, on January the 6th, the day of the Capitol protests, he texted, "He is a demonic force, a destroyer, but he's not going to destroy us. I've been thinking about this every day for 4 years." On top of all this, Fox News faces further legal action over Tucker Carlson's behavior. A former producer on his show is accusing him of running a sexist and misogynistic workplace.
She was subjected to one of the most heinous and gross working environments I could imagine.
And that may have been the final straw for the channel's billionaire owner, Rupert Murdoch.
Maybe Rupert Murdoch's trying to clean up his house today. Or maybe he's just trying to get some lawsuits to go away.
But whatever you do, don't feel too sorry for Tucker Carlson. According to the Wall Street Journal, Fox will pay him for the rest of his contract. worth an estimated $20 million a year. It's enough to make his haters choke on their cornflakes.
Now, as you may already know, Tucker Carlson is a conservative Christian who believes the extreme left is destroying the United States. Here he is addressing the Conservative Heritage Foundation just a couple of days before he was fired.
But when the Treasury Secretary stands up and says, you know what you can do to help the economy? Get an abortion. Well, that's like an Aztec principle. Well, what's the point of child sacrifice? Well, there's no policy goal entwined with that. No, that's a theological phenomenon. And that's kind of the point I'm making. None of this makes sense in conventional political terms. When people or crowds of people, or the largest crowd of people at all, which is the federal government, the largest human organization in human history, decide that the goal is to destroy things, destruction for its own sake. Hey, let's tear it down. What you're watching is not a political movement, it's evil.
Well, as you'd expect, his opponents on the left are very happy that he's lost his job and will have to be silent, at least for a while.
Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News? Oh my God, does this mean Fox News has gone woke?
Tucker couldn't be reached for comment. He's already on a plane to Moscow to meet with his manager. But what a shock. I mean, what an absolutely delightful shock.
Tucker Carlson has now worked and left MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. He's running out of options now. Like, soon he's just going to be on the Weather Channel saying that hurricanes are caused by drag queens.
And Carlson's sudden departure also exploded on Twitter. Andrew Tate, who appeared on his show at least once, said simply, "Matrix attack at Tucker Carlson." Donald Trump Jr. tweeted, "Confirmed, Tucker Carlson out at Fox News, OMG." To which someone responded, "So your dad got Tucker fired?" Another wrote, "Tucker Carlson fired on the eve of Joe Biden's announcement video that leans heavily on January the 6th imagery. No one on earth did more to expose the fraud January the 6th narrative than Tucker. Reports say Rupert Murdoch fired him for it. Now we know why." Well, that point of view is echoed by one of the most prominent conservative media analysts online, the YouTuber Mark Dice.
Got some interesting new insight into Tucker Carlson being fired from Fox News. To make a long story short, it was because he was revealing too much information about the New World Order and couldn't be controlled by Operation Mockingbird, like Sean Hannity, who probably wears a CIA pin on his lapel while he flirts with Lindsey Graham every night. Even the liberal media pundits are admitting that they don't know why Fox News fired him, because on the surface, it doesn't make any sense at all, unless you really know how things operate.
Okay, let's bring in our guests now, and we're joined by Stephen Battalio, a writer for the LA Times, Greg Swenson, chairman of Republicans Overseas, and Dominic Romano, who is a media analyst and lawyer. Welcome to the program, all of you. Dominic, I'd like to start with you. Let's first of all just clear up the very basics. Was he fired, or was it a mutually agreed decision?
According to reports, and notwithstanding the statement by Fox that they've agreed to part ways, this was a decision that appeared to come from the very top of the network.
And when you say that, do you mean Suzanne Scott, the CEO of Fox News, or do you mean Lachlan Murdoch, Rupert Murdoch?
I mean Rupert Murdoch. He was in a contract, apparently, that was renewed in 2021 with an annual salary of approximately $20 million. In the middle of renewing the contract again for another 6 years to 2029, and it looked like, or he felt like, it was going to be renewed. But something and someone intervened, and now he's without a job.
And the rumor is the Fox News is going to pay him for his entire contract.
Well, I'm not sure about that. There are conflicting reports about that.
Stephen, come in. Yeah, let's bring in Stephen.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe he's going to be paid through 2024.
At $20 million a year, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. So that brings us to why. Why would you fire your top star when you have to pay him for doing nothing for a couple of years? Stephen, you can take that one.
Clearly, they had issues with him that came out in the discovery process and when they gathered evidence for the Dominion Voting Systems lawsuit against Fox News, which was settled last week. Dominion is a voting machine company. They felt that they were defamed by Fox after the November 2020 election, when the network was covering allegations of voting fraud that were perpetuated, amplified by now former President Trump. He had Trump's lawyers on, he had Trump's representative, Rudy Giuliani, on their air, where they basically lied about voter fraud and Dominion's role in that fraud. The defamation suit was huge. It required a lot of evidence gathering and depositions from Fox News. They gathered a lot of internal communications from Fox News. And when you're in a company, you do not want your internal communications to become part of court evidence that can be released into the public. And that is what has caused many of the problems here. Probably a key factor in why Tucker is no longer with the network.
You know, a lot of people will point to the Dominion lawsuit payout as the main reason, but can I just bring your attention to something that was written in the Financial Times? Tucker was not a significant part of Dominion's defamation case. Just one of the 20 statements at issue was made on Carlson's program. The rest were made by lesser-known anchors. So, you know, people like Sean Hannity, Maria Bartiromo. My question really, Stephen, is why weren't they fired? Why did they go for Tucker, do you think?
Well, I think Tucker, by firing Tucker, the #1 primetime personality in all of cable news for several years now, it sends a message to the rest that no one is safe. If you screwed up and were part of this situation that led us to pay $787 million to settle, there could be repercussions. They started with the biggest name. There are also other issues at play here. It's not just the Dominion. It's not just what Tucker said that turned up in the Dominion evidence. There is another lawsuit involving Tucker Carlson from a fired Fox News producer who said that he created a hostile work environment and that she faced discrimination while working on his program for several months. There is apparently a lot of damning evidence in that case as well. Plus, the Murdochs were just growing weary of dealing with Tucker, who pretty much did whatever he wanted to do on his program. He was not really controlled or contained by management, and he was pretty freewheeling. And I think it was beginning to make them nervous, especially when you have lawsuits where you have to start paying people millions and millions of dollars.
Dominic, can I just come to those two lawsuits? We've got the Abby Grossberg lawsuit, which is what Stephen was referring to, and the Smartmatic lawsuit, Smartmatic being another voting machine company. Abby Grossberg, how strong does her lawsuit look at the moment?
I mean, she's alleging sexism, harassment, anti-Semitic behavior. And, you know, there are statements that are coming out in discovery. Well, first, Carlson was set to be the first witness in the Dominion lawsuit. No one is untouchable. I agree with Stephen. A message is clearly being sent here. And if you think about it, this is not the first big personality to depart or to be shown the door. Glenn Beck, Megyn Kelly, Bill O'Reilly, none of the three have bigger platforms today than they did when they left Fox. I agree with Stephen. A message is being sent. No one is untouchable. There are limits to tolerance. There are limits to, he described as freewheeling behavior. And if you're going to cost in the aggregate the network what might amount when the other two lawsuits get settled, and they likely will get settled, be a contributing factor, a major contributing factor of a network paying out $1 billion, there has to be accountability. And also,
Greg Swenson.
One more thing. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, Greg Swenson. Obviously, people are going here on this program and generally for the simplest explanation, which is that this man was out of control and he was a liability, potentially going to incur the network a huge legal bill for yet more lawsuits. Is that what you agree with? Do you agree with that, rather?
Well, I think it's partly true. You know, this is a business decision, and Rupert Murdoch has a history of doing this. You know, back in the News of the World, he literally shut down the newspaper in a way to just draw a line under the whole incident. So I think in many ways, he wants to put the Dominion lawsuit and the other suits behind him and just, sort of turn the page at Fox. I think the other issues were involved. Remember Tucker did 2 broadcasts regarding the January 6th tapes, and Rupert Murdoch stepped in and stopped him from broadcasting the 3rd episode on that. And there was a lot of pressure on Murdoch from some of the both Democrats and Republicans in the Congress and in the Senate to do that. So I surely this was a big part of it, the Dominion lawsuit and the pending lawsuits. But I think there were other issues. Stephen made a good point. I mean, I think it got to the point where Tucker was almost bigger than the network. Obviously he was the leading primetime show on cable in general, but also the leading show for Fox, and in many respects tied with the late afternoon show, The Five. But I think this is maybe an indication of the new way that TV or journalism works. It used to be driven by the viewers, and I think it's changed to something where it's driven, yes, by the viewers, but also by the activists that pressure boycotts on advertisers, and then of course the senior management of the company, and ultimately the shareholders.
You mentioned January the 6th. A lot of conservative commentators online praised Tucker Carlson for doing what he did with the video that was given to him by Kevin McCarthy. I mean, you're on a conservative network. Isn't that what he's supposed to be doing?
Right. Yeah, I think that was a real surprise to many of us on the right when Rupert Murdoch essentially pulled the 3rd day. So I would argue it's somewhat speculation, of course, that they got to Murdoch, and I think the market, and it wasn't always just Republicans and conservatives, although of course that was the majority of the audience. But I think the general audience was they often found it refreshing that Tucker Carlson was willing to say what very few other journalists were saying, at least broadcast journalists. So, I thought that was a surprise when that happened, 6 or 8 weeks ago, and I think there were other incidents where Tucker might have said something controversial. It probably didn't sit well with senior management, including Rupert Murdoch, and this might have been the last straw.
Well, what's interesting, another last straw. You take your pick. I mean, he just got through talking to the Heritage Foundation, and he was talking about how certain leftist progressive movements and actions were tantamount not just to policy making, but to actually being evil. And there are rumors that Rupert Murdoch didn't like Tucker Carlson talking about good and evil and religion to the Heritage Foundation. And a couple of days later, he was fired. Do you think that's the case? Come in, Dominic.
Look, no doubt he was a big star, okay? But the potential liabilities, the risks outweighed the rewards. There's a reason Tucker Carlson was willing to say what other anchors weren't, because he was willing to make statements for which there was no evidence, for which there was no factual basis. And when you do that in a workplace environment, when you make certain comments, and when there are records of those comments exposed in text messages and email correspondence that get discovered in very high-profile lawsuits, there will be consequences. Yes, he had the #1 time slot. He had the main time slot, but mainstream advertisers had started to stay away. That impacts shareholders. That impacts the potential economic upside to the network. And long-term, these legal entanglements create serious liability. It's a dollars and cents calculation at the end of the day.
You mentioned advertisers. Last year, in ad revenue, according to the Vivex agency, he brought in something like $77.5 million for Fox News. But as you were saying, you're saying that doesn't outweigh the potential liability. And Stephen?
Tucker was a #1 show in cable, but they probably could have made a lot more money with it if advertisers weren't afraid of it. Every time he made a controversial statement, there would be a movement on social media to boycott the program. And advertisers do not like controversy. They're already a little touchy about buying cable. Some of them won't buy cable news at all. Tucker, so polarizing, and so alienating to a lot of groups. You don't want your product to run in there. That probably depressed the pricing for the show. They should have made a lot more money than $77 million a year on it.
You say that, but I mean, he was bringing in 45% more than the next biggest show on prime time. And when he was fired, Fox News shares actually dropped something like 4%. Greg, come in.
Yeah, Matthew, I think there's a certain degree of truth to the fact that advertisers were pulling, but it wasn't just because of Tucker. And as you pointed out, he was doing much better than the other shows on Fox. There's been a real push from the activist left to boycott Fox for a long time now. And you started to see that, 5-6 years ago when, the big brands, Ford trucks and the big consumer brands started moving away. And it's probably not just Fox. I mean, they probably moved away from the other cable networks too. So the cable news shows, especially Fox, are now much more dependent on smaller business that ask the viewer to call an 800 number or click on a website, and that's just the model has shifted because Fox has been viewed as a conservative outlet for a long time, and there was a lot of pressure on advertisers.
Greg, obviously a businessman. Behind the scenes, there are lots of rumors that BlackRock Investment, who own 15% of Fox Corporation, may have put pressure on the Murdochs and on the network to get rid of Tucker Carlson. Is there any truth to that?
I don't know factually, Matthew, but it wouldn't surprise me. I think BlackRock is surely the wokest or the most well-known money manager on the activist left, and so it wouldn't surprise me, and I'm surprised it took this long, if anything. Yeah. Because as I said earlier, there has been pressure on Fox for quite a number.
I would say that politics didn't have a lot to do with that. I think the idea that you're investing in a company that's writing $787 million settlements were perhaps more on the way. I think that's really what concerned them. I think they would have been if that wasn't the issue. I think they would say, hey, whatever works, whatever gets the ratings. But when you start having to make big payments like these, and as Dominic said, you're looking at over $1 billion when all these things are done. That can put your investors in a pretty bad mood, and they're going to ask for change.
Can we just talk a little bit about CNN very briefly? They're really just a footnote to this story, which reflects the difference in their anchors' status, Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson. Don Lemon was fired, and the announcement was made just hours after Tucker Carlson. Dominic, do you think there's any significance to the timing there?
That's a great question. I don't know. They may have. It may have been motivated to reduce the amount of attention that it got. If there were something that CNN was planning in terms of timing, it was probably a wise move to have it so close to the larger profile termination. But I'm not familiar with the details surrounding that decision.
A good day to bury bad news, in other words.
I'm told it was a total coincidence.
Stephen, you're saying it's a total coincidence. Where do you get that? Let Stephen expand on that.
I've talked to people who were in the know in terms of what CNN was doing. People very close to it, and they said we just got lucky today by doing this today.
Just got lucky. Okay, Greg, let's look forward for the network now. And I've seen a lot of comments online, on Twitter, elsewhere, saying wherever Tucker goes, we're going to go. Okay, so I want to know about the impact on Fox going forward. And who do you think would replace him? Because this must be one of the best paid jobs on television.
Yeah, it's a great time slot. And remember, Tucker took over for Bill O'Reilly when he was terminated by Fox. So, and initially, when he moved into primetime, it was to take Megyn Kelly's place, who had just taken a better offer. She resigned to go to NBC. So, there's some history here. And they might not get Tucker Carlson ratings, but they surely will get pretty good ratings, and especially if they bring in one of their own to take his place. I think the leading candidate right now might be Harris Faulkner, mainly because she's the daytime star of the network. So that would make, that would be sensible. Again, they're big shoes to fill, but I think Fox is has such a great audience, and it's a great platform for conservative thinkers that, you know, they might not get Tucker Carlson ratings, but they'll surely do okay. Will Cain is another one, Lawrence Jones, Brian Kilmeade, I think, who took the Monday night slot, the first night that Tucker, after he was terminated, Brian Kilmeade stepped in. So there's a few personalities that could step in. And again, it's happened before, and they seem to do okay with the ratings.
Yeah, I saw Brian Kilmeade filling in for him, and I must say he glossed over the expulsion of his good friend and quickly moved on. I guess he doesn't want to lose his job at Fox either. Greg, Dominic, Stephen, thank you all so much for your contributions to the Nexus today. Much appreciated, and thank you at home and on your phones for watching. If you want to see this episode or any of our previous episodes, do go to our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus TRT World. Till next week then, goodbye.